Super Smash Bros. Has represented multiple iconic fighting games, and many fans want to see even more. So far, all of these titles have come from Japanese companies, as do most big budget fighting games. But there is one member of the FGC that not only comes from the West, but has impacted gaming as a whole, and this is Mortal Kombat. Debuting with its first title in 1992, the series has seen consistent releases, including on Nintendo systems, and just this year saw its newest entry with Mortal Kombat 11. This has put the series on many Smash fans' radars, who want to see one of its colourful cast of combatants appear in Super Smash Bros. I'm NantenJex, and with the help of my colleague Hamada, let's look at the potential content from Mortal Kombat that we could see in the Super Smash Bros. Fighters Pass. Today's all content in Smash video is going to be a little different, since unlike other franchises covered so far, Mortal Kombat doesn't have a single protagonist who overshadows the others. Instead, it has two mascots whose rivalry has been a staple of the series since its inception, Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Since both fighters are seen as the faces of Mortal Kombat, it isn't as clear which of these two would be more likely, so we wanted to cover both, starting with the more popular option of the two, Scorpion. Just like Ryu and Ken, Scorpion would always face his opponents in one-on-ones, be able to execute light and heavy versions of some of his attacks depending on how long the button is held, cancel certain moves into other ones, and even have the ability to execute stronger versions of his special attacks through special inputs. Scorpion is traditionally an aggressive character who focuses on rushing his opponents down and trapping them in a string of combos. However, since much of Scorpion's moves would have plenty of end lag, attempting to trap an opponent in a combo would be risky. At its core, Scorpion would be a high-risk, high-reward fighter. Now, how about those specials? Scorpion's neutral special would be the iconic Spear. Scorpion would throw the spear forward with the attack having a wide range while still not counting as a projectile. If the spear hit anyone, Scorpion would yank them towards him while screaming, "Get over here!" Once they reach him, Scorpion will have a brief time to attack them, with the amount of time the opponent was stunned depending on how high their percentage is. When that player inputs back attack, however, Scorpion would fire two flaming spears that dealt more damage and had a longer range. When used in the air, the spear would just launch opponents instead of grabbing them and act as a tether recovery. Scorpion's side special would be the leg takedown. Scorpion would slide on the ground and attempt to catch someone in between his legs. If he caught them, he would force them to the ground while dealing damage and allow for a potential follow-up attack. If the player inputs back forward attack, Scorpion will instead perform a flaming kick while sliding on the ground, launching anyone he came into contact with. Scorpion's up special would be his flame port. Scorpion would teleport in a small burst of fire before reappearing somewhere else. Wherever he reappeared, he would uppercut forward with his fist engulfing flames to gain extra height and attack nearby opponents. If the player inputs down back attack, Scorpion would perform a drop kick after his uppercut, launching both him and anyone he hit downward. Next is Scorpion's down special, Flame Aura. Scorpion would strike a meditative pose as flames engulfed his body, slightly damaging and launching anyone nearby. The flames engulfing Scorpion would remain on him for a short time after this, damaging but not flinching any nearby opponents. However, if Scorpion was hit while he's on fire, the flame would immediately dissipate. This move would function as both a quick get off me tool and a way of racking up damage on the opponent. This would also be Scorpion's only special move to not have a special input variant. Finally, there's Scorpion's final smash, and what better move to give him than Toasty, his iconic fatality from the original Mortal Kombat. Scorpion would engulf himself in flames and dash forward. Anyone hit by him would be launched into the Netherrealm, where Scorpion would take his mask off and reveal the flaming skull beneath, before breathing fire on the opponent. Scorpion's victims would then be launched out of the Netherrealm as the word fatality appeared above Scorpion's head. Moving on to Scorpion's alternative colours, he would have two costumes with 4 colours for each one. There would of course be his default colour based on his attire in Mortal Kombat 11, then a colour based on Sub-Zero, followed by one based on Ermac and one based on Reptile. His alternate costume would be based on the classic ninja gi worn by all the ninja in the original Mortal Kombat trilogy. This costume would, of course, have Scorpion's traditional yellow, followed by costumes based on Smoke, Rain and Noob Saibot. Finally, there's the Kirby hat, which would give him Scorpion's hood and mask. Now, let's move on to Sub-Zero. Like Scorpion, Sub-Zero would share various gimmicks with Ryu and Ken, always facing his opponents in one-on-ones, special inputs, etc. However, unlike Scorpion, Sub-Zero has always been more of a defensive fighter who excels at keeping his opponents at bay rather than rushing them down. While Sub-Zero would still be able to perform combos, his slower moves make them harder to get going. Now the specials. His neutral special would be his iconic Ice Ball. Sub-Zero would fire a ball of ice forward that would freeze opponents upon contact. Unlike other freezing attacks, opponents hit by the Ice Ball wouldn't launch in any direction and would instead remain where they are when hit, unless they are in the air. The amount of time opponents remain frozen would depend on how high their percentage is. If the player inputs down forward attack, Sub-Zero would fire a beam of ice instead that would travel much faster but have less range. For his side special, Sub-Zero would perform the Slide. Sub-Zero would slide on the ground using a path of ice, and when in the air this would go at a downwards angle, like an aerial falcon kick. If the player inputs back forward attack, this attack would be the same, but more powerful. Next up is Sub-Zero's up special, the Ice Clone. When on the ground, Sub-Zero would jump backwards as an ice clone that froze opponents upon contact was left in its place. In the air, Sub-Zero would jump directly upward and leave an ice clone in his place that would fall to the ground. If the player inputs down back attack while on the ground, Sub-Zero would immediately throw his clone after conjuring it. Any clone that were thrown or made in the air would damage opponents upon contact instead of freezing them. Sub-Zero's down special would be the Ice Nugget. Sub-Zero would shoot an ice beam directly upward, forming a large block of ice in the air that would then slam into the ground and launch anyone in its way. The beam Sub-Zero fired would also damage opponents, but it wouldn't make them flinch. By holding back while performing the move, the block of ice would be created closer to Sub-Zero, and by holding forward, the block would be created further away from him. Finally, there is Sub-Zero's final smash, which would bring in none other than Scorpion to unintentionally help Sub-Zero finish his foe. In Fire and Ice, Sub-Zero would begin by creating a large vortex of ice around himself that would draw opponents in. Anyone caught by the vortex would be launched into Khan's Colosseum, where Sub-Zero would fire a beam of ice at Scorpion while the Spectre shot back with a blast of fire as the opponents caught in the middle took both attacks and were subsequently launched. Onto Sub-Zero's palette swaps, which would be just like Scorpion's, one costume for his Mortal Kombat 11 attire, and then one based on his classic ninja gi. The default costume would have alternate colours based on Scorpion, Ermac and Reptile, while the alternate colours would have colours based on Smoke, Rain and Noob Saibot, pretty much the same as Scorpion. Lastly, the Kirby hat would give him Sub-Zero's mask. If you're interested in how the rest of Scorpion or Sub-Zero's movesets could look, Hamada has a Dream Smashers for both of them on the Source Gaming website, and I'll link to that down in the description below. I highly recommend it. So who would I pick out of Scorpion and Sub-Zero? Which of these two are also the most likely to appear in Smash? While both fighters are massive gaming icons, known the world over, who would be great fits for Smash, I personally think that Scorpion has a greater shot than Sub-Zero, and I think I'd want him more. Not only is the former more requested for Smash, but he's also recently become more of the franchise's mascot than Sub-Zero. In recent official art and promotional material, Scorpion has often been featured much more than his rival, even appearing alone on the box art for Mortal Kombat 10 and 11, the series' two most recent installments. However, since Sub-Zero is more of a classic icon for Mortal Kombat, even going as far as to get his own spin-off title that appeared on the Nintendo 64, he still does have a decent shot and shouldn't be counted out. Phew, that's all the fighter stuff out of the way, so let's move on to the stage. While Mortal Kombat has plenty of well-known battlefields, the pit is by far the most iconic. Appearing in the most Mortal Kombat games out of any stage, including the series' 3 most recent installments, the pit would make the most sense for Smash, especially since it already has a bottomless, pit right under its bridge. Said bridge would be the stage's main platform, with the left and right corners being broken. However, beyond those crevices would be caves that fighters could walk in or be launched into, making the pit both a walk-off stage and a traditional platform one. There'd also be the occasional floating platform to differentiate it a bit more from its Omega variant. As an extra visual detail, another bridge would be visible in the background where classic Mortal Kombat characters Rain and Kenshi would be seen battling. These two were chosen in particular since they've been used as background combatants in the pit before. Also, the pit would have both a day and night variant, with the night version being the default one and the day version being accessible by holding the L button when choosing the stage. Lastly, for the stage we have its music, and Mortal Kombat is a hard franchise to pick music for, since while its soundtracks are often good, there aren't many themes that are especially noteworthy, aside from the iconic theme from the movie that would absolutely need to be included in some form. Now this would normally be the part of the video where you lovely folks get to listen to some exciting Mortal Kombat music, but unfortunately, because of Warner Brothers' very strict guidelines on their music, that would definitely destroy this video the second it went up on YouTube. So here's the list on screen, and I'm afraid you're going to have to seek it out yourself this time. Hopefully that's not the case with the next series. Now we move on to the Classic Mode route. Regardless of which Mortal Kombat character joined Smash, their route would be titled Mortal Kombat Tournament, and be a one-on-one stamina battle with various fighters themed after classic Mortal Kombat characters. Round 1 would be against a dark blue Captain Falcon on Boxing Ring as a reference to Johnny Cage. Round 2 would be against a dark blue Zero Suit Samus on Foreside as a reference to Sonya Blade. Round 3 would be against a black wolf on Shadow Moses Island as a reference to Kano. Round 4 would be against a green Ridley on the Pit, referencing Reptile. Round 5 would be against a blue Sheik on Suzuka Castle, referencing Kitana. Round 6 would be against Ryu on Suzuka Castle, once more, referencing Liu Kang. Finally, the boss battle would be against Dracula, while the Mortal Kombat theme song played in the background, referencing the final boss of the original Mortal Kombat, Shang Tsung. So finally, we turn to the last pieces of content included in the Challenger Packs, the Spirits. Of course, there would be the Fighter Spirits, which would either be Scorpion or Sub-Zero depending on who would be included as the fighter. Regardless, there'd also be a second Fighter Spirit available, however, in the shop for said ninja's classic costume. Now let's move on to the other spirits and their battles, starting off with a legendary primary spirit that would be Shang Tsung, a grab type. The battle would take place on the pit and have the player fight 4 Scorpions or Sub-Zeros depending on who was chosen, each in a different colour before going up against a red Mewtwo, referencing Shang Tsung's ability to transform into any Mortal Kombat character at random during his boss fights. The next spirit would be Raiden, an ace defense type. He would be played by Pikachu on Skyward, who would prefer to use his down special and grab the various lightning bolts that appeared on stage. The spirit could also be enhanced into Dark Raiden, a legendary spirit. The next primary ace spirit would be either a Scorpion or Sub-Zero depending on who didn't make the cut. Sub-Zero would be a defense type played by a blue Scorpion on the battlefield version of Summit who'd spawn with a Freezy. The floor would also be covered in ice and instantly freeze those who touched it. Meanwhile, Scorpion, an attack type, would be played by a yellow Sub-Zero on Castle Siege, who'd automatically have their final smash. He'd be accompanied by a dark young Link who would also prefer to use his grab. Now, the only advanced spirit would be Liu Kang, played by Ryu on Suzuka Castle. Occasionally, Ryu's launch power would be buffed, and while he's in this state, he would use his up special more often. Finally, there are the novice spirits, with the first one being Kano, a primary grab type. He'd be played by a black wolf on Shadow Moses Island who'd use his neutral special often. The other novice spirit would be Goro, an attack type played by 2 Donkey Kongs on the pit. Next up we have the support spirits. Kitana is first, played by a blue Sheik on Suzuka Castle. She'd be wielding a killing edge and get help from a green Sheik that would spawn after enough time has passed, referencing Kitana's close friend and fellow assassin Jade. Her power would let players start with a killing edge. Next we have Johnny Cage, played by a dark blue Captain Falcon on Boxing Ring. He would spawn with a Deku Nut and use his neutral special often. This spirit reduces stun time on the player. Then Reptile, played by a green Ridley on the pit, who would occasionally turn invisible. His spirit makes the player start in metal form. Lastly, there's Sonya Blade, a support spirit played by a dark blue Zero Suit Samus on Foreside. She would use her down and up specials pretty often. So that does it for all the spirits, which means the last thing for us to cover are the potential Mii costumes that could come with the Mortal Kombat Challenger Pack. The first would be a brawler set referencing Liu Kang, with the red headband and spiked arm braces. Your Mii would feel just like the champion of Mortal Kombat. The second costume would be a sword fighter set for Raiden, with his staff taking the place of a sword. After all, what Mii wouldn't want to wear that hat and be the god of thunder? And with that, we have all of the Mortal Kombat content we could potentially see in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. A special thanks to Hamada for all the research done for this video. It wouldn't be possible without him. It also wouldn't be possible without our amazing patrons, who will be on screen momentarily. If you want to know how you can support us, then please check the link in the description. With that, leave your comment below and with your thoughts and series you want us to cover. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and please share this with your friends, acquaintances, strangers, followers, rivals, other fighters, and whoever else you can bring over here to this video. Just make sure that you always tell them to return to the source.